Alright, hello you beautiful people, how you all doing? I hope you're all doing great. Usually I would have this pre-recorded about a week or two ahead, but since I didn't have much time, I'm recording this on the day that I'm uploading it. So today's video will be about data types in JavaScript, because I don't think I've mentioned them at all, if I remember correctly, but pretty much what data types are basically like, let's say it's a way of defining variables that will let us work with like various basically we can define variables in a certain way. For example, we can say that variable is text, the other one is a number, and so on and so forth. So the thing with that is you can see our original example. It's pretty much the same across a lot of the tutorials. Nothing has changed beside me calling this file for the script, which is over here. It's empty. And what we're going to do is I'm going to pretty much show you what you can do. So first I'm going to make here a going to do document.get not get animations, but get element by ID and dot inner HTML equal to something. I will complete that later. And let's say I want to change the result, so we're going to type and we're going did not mean to do that, but okay, there we go. And we're going to say here result, so in the double quotes, and result. And now we're going to define our variable. The first variable will be, for example, x, so I'm going to type in x here. I'm going to define it over here as var x. So x right now is undefined, so if I do F5 it will say undefined. And what we can do is we can say, hey, I want you to let's say I do this. Let's say I do 12 plus and then in double quotes something on the lines of 12 items, for example. And what should happen is it should write out as 12 items like this. So you can tell that this was a regular number, but this is a string. So what happened here? Why does it show up as a regular string? Why is it together? Shouldn't be separate. Well, the thing is that JavaScript will treat this number as a string, as like a regular string. So if we want to treat it as a number, we have to have it separate. For example, we can also, another thing to remember is that it evaluates, that JavaScript evaluates results, or basically expressions, from left to right. So as if you were reading a text from left to right, that's how it's doing it. So let's say I would have added, I don't know, let's say 8 to the number. So what should happen is we should see 20 items right here. Boom, 20 items. So basically it's going from left to right, so it does 12 plus 8, which is 20, and then adds items to it. If you want to treat it as text, you have to put it in double quotes. So we can add them like this, and what should happen, it should say 128 items instead. See? So that's how you pretty much can work with this. There's also another thing you need to remember. If you want to do something along these lines but want to move it, for example, behind it, what you can do is we can copy this. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to add another plus sign behind it. And if I were to remove these double quotes, what will happen is it will, if I save this and reload this, you'll see it doesn't add these two together. But the thing is that if you define a string at the beginning, it's going to pretty much think that all the other operators, all the other things are pretty much text or strings in our case. So it's going to treat it, okay, this is a text, so I'm assuming that this is a text as well, and this is a text as well. So it's going to treat it as text. That's why we have this over here happening. But that's not to say that we cannot change them. We can actually change them on the fly. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to, oops, did not mean to do that. I'm going to add these double quotes in here and put it over here. And here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to have here, for example, a number, just a number, for example, 12. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to say that x is equal to 7, for example. So what I did just now is let me just space them out a little. So, instead of 12 here, what do I want to do here? I want to actually change this to a string, actually. So let's say this is a text. So you would assume that it would print the number 12 first and then do this. Well, what it does actually is it changes its data types. So it first was defined as 12, but what we decided to do is we decided to say, hey, you know what, you're a string now. So this is basically an example of strings being strings, or actually data types being dynamic within JavaScript. Basically what you're seeing here is we have our variable x, which is equal to 12, which is pretty much a number over here. But if I hover over this, it will still say it's a number, but what it is, it's actually a string. It's a bit of text, which is a string. So it will do, it will change it to a string. Even though it says it's a number, it's what it's originally defined as. So it's still going to think it's a number, but in fact it's a string right now. That's however not the only thing we can do. Strings don't have to be defined in double quotes. Strings can actually be defined even in single quotes. So I'm going to copy all of this, and I'm going to comment these out once again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have two variables this time. I'm going to have also a variable y because I want to show you something. And here we're going to have a double quote variable. Oops, not a double quote, so a double quote. And here we're going to have a single quote variable. So I need to also fix that. You cannot combine single quotes and double quotes like this. Well, like this in a variable at least. You can add them. And what we can do is we can in fact put like double quotes inside of single quotes actually. Actually, we can do it. For example, I can put this around this text thing right here, and you'll notice it doesn't change anything. It's still working like just fine. So you can put them together. It's just that they have to be the surrounding string, like the surrounding type. So you cannot like have this one be a double quote and this one be a single quote. Both of them have to be of the same type. Same goes for here. You can have a double quote here and a single quote here. They both have to be the same type around a set piece of text. And we can add these together. So, for example, hello, and we're going to print them together. And to do this, we just add them together. I cannot type apparently. So what I did is I told it to put them together. See, it's going to put them together. If I remove this, it's going to put them together like so, without the space. See that? So you have to put in the space right here, or you can put in the space before this, and it will do the exact same thing. It just depends on when you put the space. But I'm going to put it over here, and it's going to work the same way. Numbers are pretty much fun within JavaScript. You can define pretty much any type what you want, and there's also some really neat functions you can use, or very neat features within JavaScript that you can use in terms of adding them or displaying which types are of those numbers or what they can do. So let's say that we just put it in here like this, and we're going to have here 3 numbers this time around. So here I'm going to do, for example, 3. Here I'm going to do 6. I'm going to create another variable this time, and I'm going to say 9 over here. So 3, 6, and 9. Or we can do 7, 8, 9 if you know what I mean by that. Anyhow, what we can do is we can actually, I'm going to make another variable just for fun. We'll call it test. And what this will do, it will basically take in whatever the result of a equation is. So we'll have test over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to define something really special here. So what we can do is a really neat feature within JavaScript. Let me show you what I mean. Actually, it won't work, so I have to have 3 identical and then a different one. So let's do these first 2 to be identical. Wait, no, wrong. There we go. So these 2 will be identical. So x and y are identical, but y and z aren't, and x and z are not identical. So what we can do is we can check if a certain quote is true. So what we can do is we can say, for example, x is equal to y, and what it will do, it will return that it is like 6, because I'm a dunce. Test over here. And it says it's true because x and y are indeed equal. They are true. So what this did is it printed out the result that we were expecting. But let's say we change this to z over here. It's supposed to... What happened just now? It's supposed to say that it's not, that it's false, basically. See? It does that. Pretty much what we are doing here is we are checking the conditional statements. And they can be only one of 2 types. They can be either true or false. If we're talking about quantum computers, there's also the option to be either of those, but that's not what we're covering. We're covering only the basics here, so they can be either true or false. That's why we use conditional statements to identify certain things. There's also like arrays and such, which are like really fun. Just for the sake of completion, I'm going to cover arrays real quick. So let me just copy this, even though I'm gonna have to change this again later. I could have just looked at the code from the previous session, but I'm too lazy. Whoops. And I'm going to add here another lines. There we go. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to define an array using this test variable right here, and we're going to get rid of this number variable because we don't need it anymore. So I got rid of it right now, and we have on this var test. And if we want to define a array, we're going to do it as follows. We're going to put in these square brackets, and within the square brackets we're going to put double quotes in them, for example. And we're going to say, I don't know, apple, lemon, and I don't know, cherry, for example. So we have this array called test, and if I decide to print it out, it will print out the array with each and every item. And that's pretty much how you define an array, and the way it numbers them is like, for example, 0, 1, and 2. And let's say when I print out just the first item of these, it's actually really easy to do. You just put in square brackets and then you put in the number of the item you want. So let's say when I print out lemon, to print out lemon you have to put in 1. So if I save this and reload it, it will print out just lemon. Let's say when I print out cherry, so I have to put in 2, so 0, 1, 2, that should print out cherry, and it does, it prints out cherry. So you can pretty much go nuts with this. You can also change this to 0, for example, to print out apple, and it will print it out just like that, because it counts like 0, 1, and 2. So that's how you work with arrays. That's one method, one way you can work with them. You can also have number arrays, so you can change these into numbers, or you can also do other things with them, but usually strings and numbers are pretty much the most used thing when it comes to this. So that's that. Then there are objects. I'm not going to cover objects here. The only thing I'm going to mention is that objects will be the part of the next episode, so you guys know what to expect for the next week. So then there is the type of operator, and what it can do is it can return to us the type of a operator. So what we can do is we can, let me just comment this out again so that it like make sense to all of you hopefully later on. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to type in type of, and then we say 1, for example. And what I should have done is copy this, so we can actually, well, there's another way we could use to print out certain things, but you know what, yeah, I think we should mention that there's another way of printing out stuff. So there's the console.log function that you can use to print out a result of something without having to resort to such things such as document.getElement by id.innerHTML. You can just print it out into the console, so if I reload this, it won't change. But what will change is if I press F12 and you look into the, where's the console? There it is. And you look into the console and I refresh this, it's not gonna say anything, because it doesn't really have anything to like go off from. So what we need to do is we can just, you know, get rid of it and refresh it, and it's not gonna say anything, not gonna do anything at all whatsoever. So what you need to do actually is we need to still use this, so it wasn't a good example. So we can pretty much get a result of a certain type, so I'm going to copy this section and I'm going to change this to say type of, and then say 1, and what should happen is this result should change into number. See, so now it does work, so I have to add it in like this. Let's say we want to print out a string, so let's do test right here and we refresh it. It says it's a string, so you can go nuts with this basically. There's also the single quote strings, so to prove that it is actually a string. Oops, wrong key. Boom, it still says it's a string, and what you can do is you can actually get rid of this and you refresh it, it still says it's a string. But you can also get rid of it fully, and if I refresh this, it's not gonna do anything. In fact, it gave us an error. The way you can check for errors is in your browser. If you press F12, it's going to say there's a syntax error. That's because it's expecting something behind this. So to fix it, just add, for example, just add the number 1, for example, and no errors are gonna be in there anymore. So you can use F12 with the console to check for errors in your code if you have any. There's also various different ways you can check for like, you know, for various like numbers and such, but that's not important. The other data type, and one of the final ones, is basically the unidentified variable. And the identified variable is really easy to define. I'm in fact going to reuse this because I'm lazy. I'm going to define a variable car, for example, and I'm going to just do type of car. And what's going to happen, it's going to say identified because undefined, sorry, because it is undefined, it doesn't have anything defined. By using this, it will say that it's undefined. You can in fact get rid of the var thing altogether and refresh it like this, and it won't change because you don't have the value defined, and you don't also have the type defined. The type is before the name, so if you want a type, for example variable, you can use var, or I think it was len. Oh crap, did not realize it. Len or let, it was let, yeah, let it was. You can also use let instead of var, and it will just work like that, but it's still undefined. So you can use either let or var, but it's up to you. Yeah, I'm just looking. There's also the last one, which is the null variable, and we can check this really easily, you know. We can say that our car over here is actually equal to null, for example, and if we refresh this, it will say it's an object. The reason is that even though it doesn't have anything in it, null is still considered as a type of an object within JavaScript. So null is usually used to define like a empty space somewhere, so it will still consider it as a form of an object basically. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys learned something today. I'm going to go and edit this video now. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see all of you beautiful people hopefully next time.